The Black Hawk didn't explode, it shredded. Metal shrieked as the rotor clipped pine, and the world became green and fire. Claire Holloway tasted copper, heard screaming through the headset, then canopy struck like a fist. She woke to silence. The wrong kind. Ears ringing, forest watching. Radio dead. Left shoulder dislocated. Jet fuel burning behind her. 20 meters later, she heard voices. Not English. Organized. They were hunting her. Claire pressed against a cedar, checked her rifle, keyed the dead radio. Nothing. 12 miles from extraction. Alone. A hand closed on her wrist. "You're walking downwind," a voice said, weathered and low. "Just told them exactly where you are." An old man, 70 easy, canvas coat smelling like wood smoke in decades, not aiming at her, looking at her boots. "The way you're moving," he said, "you'll be dead by dark." Three days before the crash, Claire Holloway had made a promise to a dead man. "You earned that tab," her father had said, 15 years gone but still talking in the back of her mind. Staff Sergeant Holloway, 2 tours in places the Army still wouldn't talk about, the kind of soldier who'd taught her to field strip an M4 before she could ride a bike. Don't waste it proving you belong. Just belong. She hadn't wasted it. 27 years old, Ranger qualified, designated marksman with 43 confirmed kills she never talked about. They'd given her a recon tasking in the Bitterroot Range. Solo observer, light footprint, 0 contact expected. The briefing officer had been explicit about that part. "We need eyes on these coordinates," Major Reeves had said, sliding the folder across the desk at Fort Lewis. Satellite picked up irregular thermal signatures. Probably nothing. Hunters, maybe a grow operation. But state wants confirmation before they commit resources. "Why me?" "Because you're good, you're quiet, and frankly, Holloway, a woman walking these trails raises fewer red flags than a 4-man team in full kit." He tapped the map. 48 hours, in and out. Verify the site, photograph anything unusual. RTB, easy money. It should have been easy. The insertion went glass smooth. Black Hawk dropped her at dawn on a ridge 3 clicks west of the coordinates, rotors barely disturbing the pine canopy. The pilot was good, X-161st SOAR, the kind who could thread a needle in a sandstorm. He'd given her a thumbs up as she jumped, and she'd watched the helo disappear into the gray morning like it had never existed. 4 hours of hiking brought her to the coordinates. Nothing there. Just trees, granite, a dry creek bed that hadn't seen water in months. She'd taken photos anyway, documented the site, called it in on the sat phone. That's when things went wrong. Static. Then a voice, clipped and urgent. "Osprey 2, abort mission." Repeat, abort and extract immediately. Authentication, Charlie Whiskey 7. Authentication was wrong. She'd memorized the code, Delta Foxtrot 9. Someone was on the channel who shouldn't be. "Negative," she'd replied. "Authentication invalid. Request proper credentials." The line went dead. Completely dead. Not even carrier static. And 30 seconds later, the tree line 200 meters east started moving in ways trees don't move on their own. She'd called for extract on the backup frequency, got through to the Black Hawk, and the pilot had come in hot and high, rotor wash bending saplings like they were grass. But he'd also come in loud, and whoever was in those trees had brought friends with very good aim. The RPG hit the tail rotor at 200 feet. Not a kill shot. Those Night Stalker pilots could fly a brick if you asked them to, but enough to turn a controlled descent into a barely controlled crash. Claire had watched the altimeter spin, felt the airframe shudder, and thought about her father's voice one more time before the canopy came up to meet them. Now she was staring at an old man who'd appeared out of nowhere, smelled like he'd been living in these woods since Roosevelt, and was telling her she was doing everything wrong. "Who the hell are you?" Claire kept her M4 level, center mass, the way you were supposed to. Her shoulder was screaming, but her hands were steady. Name's Elijah Crowe. He said it the way you'd say, pleased to meet you, at a church social. And if you don't lower that rifle and start listening, you won't live long enough to care. I don't take orders from civilians. Then take advice from someone who's kept breathing in these woods longer than you've been alive. He nodded past her, toward the wreckage. Smoke's rising straight up. No wind. That means they can see it from 4 valleys over. And you walked 20 meters, leaving a blood trail Helen Keller could follow. Claire glanced down. He was right. Her pant leg was soaked, and she'd been too hopped on adrenaline to notice. I'm trained for this. Trained for a lot of things, I'd bet, but not for this. Elijah's eyes flicked to her patch, 75th Ranger Regiment. Rangers are good, real good, but they teach you to fight, not to disappear. Out here, fighting's the last resort. Disappearing's how you stay alive. She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him about land nav, about E&E protocols, about the fact that she'd graduated top of her class in survival school. But survival school had trees with trail markers and instructors who showed up if you got really lost. This forest didn't have markers, and the instructors were hunting her. Fine, she said. What do I do? First thing, shut up and move. Elijah moved through the forest like water. No wasted motion, no snapped branches, nothing that said human. Claire tried to match him, but every step felt loud, clumsy, wrong. Her shoulder was grinding bone on bone. Her head was still ringing from the crash, and she'd lost her camelback somewhere in the wreckage, which meant she was already dehydrating. He stopped after 50 meters, crouched behind a deadfall oak that looked like it had been there since the Civil War, and pointed at the ground without saying a word. Claire knelt beside him, scanning. See that? Dirt. Look closer. His voice was barely a whisper, but it carried weight like a shout. And stop breathing through your mouth. You sound like a freight train. She looked closer. Took her a moment. Her vision was still swimming a little from the concussion she definitely had, but then she saw it. A boot print, partial, in the soft earth near a rotted stump. Military tread, deep at the heel, recent enough that the edges hadn't crumbled yet. Not yours, Elijah said, and not mine. Someone came through here in the last hour, moving fast. He traced the edges with his finger, careful not to touch. See how the dirt's pushed forward at the toe? He was running. And see the spacing? He pointed at a second print, 3 feet ahead. Long strides, someone scared or someone hunting. Hunters don't run. Smart ones do when they've got backup. He rose in one smooth motion, no creaking joints, no old man grunt, just up and scanning the canopy like a man 40 years younger. You got a sidearm? Claire pulled her Glock 19 from her thigh holster, checked the chamber out of habit. 15 rounds plus 1. Always. Good. Rifles for when they see you. Pistols for when they're close enough to smell you. He started moving again, angling upslope, where the lodgepole pines grew so thick they blocked out half the sky. We're going higher. They'll expect you to run downhill, toward roads, toward civilization. We're going where roads don't go, and civilization gave up trying. My extraction point is 12 miles that way. He still didn't point, just ticked his head slightly northwest. Through open terrain, across 2 state highways, and past at least one population center where someone will see you, remember you, and maybe make a phone call. You'll be dead in 3 miles if you try for it alone. So you can follow me, or you can make your own luck. But decide fast because they're behind us. They're not stupid, and they've got radios, which means coordination. Claire made the decision her father would have made. Trust the terrain, trust your instincts, and when someone who knows more than you offers help, you take it and say thank you. She followed. They covered ground fast after that. Not running, Elijah had been clear that running in the forest was how you broke an ankle or impaled yourself on a deadfall branch. but moving with purpose. He led her across 2 creek beds, stepping only on stones and never in the water itself. He showed her how to brush out their back trail with a pine branch without making it obvious, how to check for tripwires by watching where the spider webs were intact, how to read the forest floor for signs of recent human passage. "There," he said, pointing at a sapling bent at an odd angle. "Someone grabbed that for balance. See the broken bark? Fresh. Maybe 20 minutes ahead of us." "Ahead? They're not all behind us, girl. They're boxing us in." His face was grim. Standard sweep pattern. Push from behind, cut off the front, squeeze toward a kill zone in the middle. Whoever trained these boys knew their business. By the time the sun dropped below the ridgeline, Claire's respect for Elijah Crowe had gone from grudging to absolute. He led her 3 miles upslope, through terrain that didn't exist on any map she'd studied, across 2 creek beds without leaving prints, under deadfalls that formed natural tunnels, and into a limestone overhang that hid them so perfectly she wouldn't have seen it from 10 feet away. The entrance was masked by a curtain of mountain laurel, and inside the stone shelf was 8 feet deep, dry as a bone, with sightlines that covered their back trail for 100 meters. No fire, no light, just the smell of wet stone and the sound of her own breathing, which was still too loud for Elijah's taste. "Eat," he said, handing her something wrapped in wax paper. Jerky, homemade, venison by the taste, seasoned with something that might have been juniper. Good enough that she didn't ask questions. "You're burning calories faster than you think. Adrenaline crash will hit in about 20 minutes, and when it does, you'll want to sleep for a week. Don't. We move again in 3 hours." She ate. Drank the last of her water from her backup bottle. The Camelback was definitely gone. Checked her rifle by touch in the darkness. 14 rounds left in the mag, 2 30-round spares on her kit. Not great, not terrible. Enough to make a stand if it came to that. "So what are you?" she asked, keeping her voice low. "Prepper? Hermit? Witness protection?" "Hunter." He said it simply, like it explained everything. And maybe it did. "Been tracking these mountains since I was 16. My father taught me, his father taught him. You learn the land or the land buries you. No middle ground out here." "You live out here full time?" "Got a cabin, 10 miles north of here. 1 room, wood stove, no electricity. But I spend more time walking than sitting. Can't hunt deer from a rocking chair." He glanced at her in the dimness, and his eyes were sharp despite his age. "Your Army." "Ranger Battalion, 3rd of the 75th, Recon." "Korea," he said. "Scout Attachment, 1st Cav, 52 to 54. Back when we didn't have satellites or GPS or night vision or any of the things that make soldiers think they're smarter than the dirt under their boots." He leaned back against the stone, and for the first time she heard his breathing, not labored, but deeper than it had been. He was tired, just hit it better than most. "Learned real quick that all that gear doesn't mean much when the enemy knows the land better than you do. Lost half my unit in the first month because we trusted maps drawn by people who'd never set foot in the valleys we were walking through." Claire processed that. Korea. That made him 78 in November, Elijah said, reading her face like he read the forest floor. "And before you ask, yeah, I can still walk you into the ground. Age is just a number. Experience is what keeps you breathing." "I don't doubt it." She paused, studying his profile in the fading light. Weathered face, hands that had seen decades of hard work, but eyes that missed nothing. "Why are you helping me?" His jaw tightened. Just for a second, barely perceptible, but she'd been trained to read micro-expressions. Something there, something that hurt. "Because 5 years ago, I didn't help someone," he said finally, "and I've been living with that ever since." "What happened?" Elijah was quiet for a long moment, then, "Federal agent, name was Marcus Webb, DEA, though he didn't advertise it, asked me to guide him through this valley, said he was tracking shipments, patterns, people who didn't belong, paid me $200 a day, which was more than I'd see in a month of hunting. We were 3 days in when they came. Who? Don't know. Didn't stick around to ask. His voice was flat, no emotion, which meant there was too much emotion underneath. Webb told me to run, said he'd hold them off, buy me time. I was 63, not stupid, not armed for a firefight, so I ran. And I heard the shooting stop 20 minutes later. Found his body 2 days after that, when I finally worked up the courage to go back. They'd left him where he fell. Message, maybe, or just didn't care enough to hide him. Claire felt something cold settle in her chest. That's not your fault. I know that. His voice was rough now, like sandpaper on steel. Took me 3 years and a lot of sleepless nights to know it. But knowing it and feeling it are different things. And I swore that if I ever saw those people again, or if I ever found someone else in the same situation, I wouldn't run. Not again. And here I am. Here you are. He looked at her directly. So yeah, I'm helping you because you need help. And because I need to know I'm not the kind of man who runs anymore. Fair enough? Fair enough. Claire extended her hand. Thank you. He shook it, firm grip, calloused palm, the handshake of a man who'd worked with his hands his entire life. Don't thank me yet. We're not out of this, not by a long shot. They moved at dawn, when the light was gray and the shadows still owned the forest, and everything looked like it could kill you if you weren't paying attention. Elijah taught her as they walked, small things, the kind of details that didn't show up in field manuals or ranger school or anywhere the Army thought to write down. Don't step on the center of fallen branches, he said, demonstrating. Step near the ends, where they're still anchored to the trunk or the ground. Less noise, less chance of breaking through. And if you do break through, you've got something solid to catch yourself on. Claire mimicked his movements, felt clumsy doing it, but after 10 minutes she started to get the rhythm. Step, test weight, commit. Step, test, commit. When you cross a clearing, don't go straight across, Elijah continued. Curve your path. Makes it harder to track your line of travel. Predators move in straight lines. Prey curves. And right now, we're prey. I don't like being prey. Nobody does. But accepting it keeps you alive long enough to become the predator again. He stopped, knelt by a patch of disturbed moss, ran his hand over it without touching. See this? Claire crouched beside him. The moss was compressed, flattened, with boot treads visible in the damp earth beneath. Someone sat here. Recently, less than 4 hours, he pointed at the pattern. See how the compression is deeper on the left? Right-handed person, sitting, leaning on their rifle which was propped on their left side. Rested here maybe 10, 15 minutes. Long enough to eat, drink, check their gear. They're organized. Very. He stood, scanned the tree line. Which means we're still being followed, and they're spacing themselves smart. Leapfrogging cover, taking turns at point, keeping interval. This isn't some militia weekend warrior bullshit. These boys are professional. Claire felt her pulse kick up. How many? 3, maybe 4. Hard to tell. They're good about not bunching up. But they're carrying weight. See how deep the prints are? He pointed at a clear boot impression near a tree root. That's a 170, 180-pound man carrying another 40, 50 pounds of gear. Armor, weapons, ammunition. They're equipped for sustained operations. Military contractors? Maybe, or something worse. Elijah's face was carved granite. Private security, cartel enforcers, people who know how to operate but don't have rules of engagement slowing them down. They started walking again, faster now, and Claire's mind was racing through threat assessments and tactical options. Standard doctrine said establish communications, call for backup, set up a defensive position, and wait for the cavalry. But her comms were dead. The cavalry didn't know where she was, and the only defensive position worth a damn would be one these contractors didn't know about. which meant trusting Elijah's knowledge of terrain over her military training. "You said something worse than contractors," she said. "What did you mean?" He was quiet for maybe 50 paces. Then, "I told you about Marcus Webb, DEA agent 5 years ago. What I didn't tell you is what he told me the night before they killed him, which was that he wasn't tracking drugs." Elijah's voice was low, measured. He was tracking a network, military hardware moving through civilian channels, night vision, body armor, encrypted radios, the kind of gear that doesn't just fall off a truck. Someone was supplying someone, and the routes all came through this valley. Claire's blood went cold. "That's way above a DEA pay grade." "That's what I said. He told me he'd gone up the chain, filed reports, flagged shipments, and every time his investigation got shut down. Different reasons: lack of evidence, jurisdictional conflicts, resource allocation, but always shut down." Elijah stopped, turned to face her. "2 weeks later, he came here off the books. No backup, no official authorization, just him and me and a theory he couldn't prove. And they killed him for it. They killed him to send a message: leave the valley alone, don't ask questions. And it worked. Nobody's come back. Until you." By midday, they'd covered 6 miles, most of it uphill through terrain that would have broken a mountain goat's spirit, and Claire was starting to understand why Elijah Crowe had lasted 78 years in country that killed younger men regularly. He wasn't just good, he was surgical. Every step calculated for sound discipline, every rest stop chosen for sight lines, cover, and escape routes. Every creek crossing done at an angle that broke their back trail and forced pursuers to waste time reacquiring the track. He moved through the forest like he was part of it, reading the land the way other people read newspapers. And Claire, who'd spent 2 years in the regiment learning to be invisible, felt like a marching band by comparison. They stopped in a dense stand of lodgepole pine, where the ground was carpeted in needles 3 inches deep, and sound died before it traveled 10 feet. Perfect ambush site if you were the one doing the ambushing. Elijah knelt behind a deadfall, pulled out a pair of binoculars so old they might have been Korean War surplus, and glassed their back trail for a full 3 minutes without moving. "3 of them," he said finally, "maybe 400 meters back, moving in staggered column. They're herding us." Herding? Pushing us in a direction without engaging directly. Not straight at us, just steering, like working cattle. He lowered the glass and his expression was grim. "Means there's something ahead they want us to walk into." Claire felt her training kick into high gear. "Kill box. Maybe, or just terrain they know better than we do, where they can control the engagement." He handed her the binoculars. "Look at the one in the lead. Gray jacket, black pack, moving at point." She glassed him through the gaps in the trees. Fit, 40s, moved with the confidence of someone who'd done this before. Not army, wrong posture, wrong kit discipline. Contractor, like Elijah had said. And he was scanning the tree line ahead of his position, not behind him. "He's not tracking us," Claire said slowly. "He already knows where we are." Bingo! Elijah took the binoculars back, stowed them in his coat pocket, which means someone's got eyes on us from another angle, or they've got this route wired with sensors. Motion sensors? Too unreliable out here. Animals trigger them constantly. Deer, elk, bear. You'd have false positives every 10 minutes. He stood slowly, scanning the canopy through the lattice of pine branches. But a drone? Thermal imaging drone circling high enough we can't hear it? That'd work. Claire's blood went cold. If they've got aerial surveillance, we're not dead yet, so they don't have continuous coverage. Elijah pointed up at the canopy, where the lodgepole pines grew so thick they formed an almost solid ceiling of branches and needles. But they might have had one earlier, before the trees got this dense, which means they know our general bearing and speed, not our exact position. They're making educated guesses and using ground elements to confirm. So we change bearing? No. Elijah's voice was hard, decisive. We let them think they're hurting us, let them commit to their assumptions, and then we loop back and take one of them out of the equation. Claire stared at him. The old man who looked like someone's grandfather was calmly proposing a tactical ambush against professional contractors. You want to engage. I want to survive. He met her eyes, and there was steel there that had nothing to do with age and everything to do with experience. You ever kill someone up close? Not through a scope, not from Overwatch position. Close enough to see their face? Yes. Afghanistan, 3 years ago. A compound breach that went sideways. She didn't talk about it. Good, because if we don't cut their numbers, they'll run us down by nightfall. I'm too old to outrun anyone anymore, and you're carrying an injury that's going to slow you down more with every mile. He nodded at her shoulder, which she'd been favoring without realizing it. So we stack the odds back in our favor. One less gun chasing us means better odds of reaching my cache. You have a cache? 2 miles north of here. Weapons, ammunition, supplies. Built it 5 years ago after Webb died. Figured if they ever came back, I'd need something more than harsh language and a hunting rifle. A ghost of a smile crossed his weathered face. Paranoia pays, sometimes. The ambush site was perfect. A natural choke point where the trail narrowed between 2 granite outcrops, with a fallen hemlock across the path that forced anyone coming through to slow down and step over. Elijah positioned Claire on the high side, prone behind a rotted log with good lines of sight for 30 meters. He took the low side, behind a boulder, with his own rifle, a Remington 700 that looked older than half the trees around them. You take the shot, he whispered. I'll cover the backfield in case his buddies rush. How do you know they'll come through here? Because I left sign. He pointed back the way they'd come. A broken branch, a scuff mark in the dirt, subtle but deliberate. Gave them a trail to follow. They'll think we're still ahead, moving fast. So they'll move fast too. Claire's hands tightened on her M4. What if they don't bite? Then we wasted 20 minutes and we keep running. Elijah settled into position. But my gut says they will. These boys are confident, and confidence makes you sloppy. They waited. 5 minutes. 10. Claire controlled her breathing, felt the forest settle around her, became part of the silence. This was familiar ground, the waiting, the focus, the way time stretched before action collapsed it. She'd done this in the Hindu Kush, in training ranges from Georgia to Washington, but never with a 78-year-old Korean war vet who moved like smoke and talked like Hemingway. Then she heard it, boots on stone, moving quick, too quick. Gray jacket came through first, scanning ahead, rifle up. Claire put her reticle center mass, finger on the trigger, waiting for Elijah's call. The contractor stepped over the log, paused, looked down at the trail. Now, Elijah said. Claire fired twice, double tap, textbook, the way her father had taught her before the Army refined it. The contractor dropped, surprise more than pain on his face, and Elijah was already up and moving, rifle sweeping the back trail. Clear, he said after 3 seconds. His friends are far enough back they didn't hear. Move. Claire low-crawled to the body, checked for vitals, none, and stripped his pack. Radio, encrypted. 3 mags for an HK416, energy bars, and a laminated map with their valley marked in red, with grid coordinates and penciled notes. Look at this, she said, holding it up. Elijah took it, studied it for half a second, and his face went pale. Jesus Christ. What? These coordinates, he tapped the map. This isn't a smuggling route, this is a patrol grid. For what? For finding someone. He looked at her, and for the first time since she'd met him, Elijah Crowe looked scared. They're not hunting you because you crashed. They're hunting you because you were sent here, and someone made sure you'd crash. They moved fast after that. No more lessons, no more careful tracking, just hard miles, upslope, into terrain so steep Claire's thighs burned, and her lungs felt like crushed glass. Elijah didn't slow down, didn't look back, just climbed. By the time they hit a granite shelf 2,000 feet higher, the sun was setting and Claire's shoulder was a white-hot scream she couldn't ignore anymore. "Stop," she gasped. "I need—" 5 minutes. Elijah was already scanning their back trail with the binoculars. They'll have found him by now, which means they know we're armed, we're dangerous, and we're not running blind anymore. "Why would someone target my mission?" Claire leaned against a boulder, trying to breathe. "We were just confirming coordinates." "For what?" "I don't know. They don't tell us that part." "Well, someone knew." Elijah lowered the glass. "And whoever sent you made sure you wouldn't report back." He turned to her, and his voice was rough. 5 years ago, I was guiding a federal agent through these woods. He was investigating the same thing: movements, patterns, people who shouldn't be here. We were 3 days in when they came for us." Claire felt her stomach drop. "What happened?" "I ran." Elijah's jaw clenched. "He told me to run, said he'd hold them off. I was 63, not stupid, so I ran. And I heard the gunfire stop 20 minutes later." "That's not your fault." "I know." His voice was hollow. "But I also know what they do to people who get too close to whatever they're protecting. And I won't let it happen again." Claire met his eyes, saw the guilt there, the weight of years, the kind of burden that made men either break or become something harder. "Then we don't run," she said. "We figure out what they're hiding, and we burn it down." Elijah studied her for a long moment, then nodded, once, sharp. "Your father teach you that?" "He taught me not to leave people behind." Claire checked her rifle, counted her mags again, still not enough. "And he taught me that when someone shoots at you, you shoot back twice as hard." "Good lessons." Elijah slung his rifle. "Come on, I know a place we can ford up for the night, and tomorrow we start hunting them." The ambush site was perfect, a natural choke point where an old game trail narrowed between two granite outcrops, with a fallen hemlock across the path that forced anyone coming through to slow down, step over, and expose themselves for exactly 3 seconds. 3 seconds was all Claire needed. Elijah positioned her on the high side, prone behind a rotted log, with moss growing thick enough to hide her outline. Good lines of sight for 30 meters in both directions. Solid backstop if she had to bug out fast. He took the low side, behind a boulder twice his size, with his Remington 700 resting on a natural notch in the stone. "You take the shot," he whispered, voice barely audible even at 3 feet. "I'll cover the backfield in case his buddies rush our position. 2 in the chest if you can. 1 in the head if that's all you've got time for." "How do you know they'll come through here?" "Because I left sign back at our last position." He pointed with his chin, not his hand. Hand movement caught eyes even at distance. "Broken branch at eye level. Scuff mark in the dirt that's too obvious to be accidental. Gave them a trail to follow. They'll think we're still ahead, moving fast, getting sloppy. So they'll move fast too." Claire's hands tightened on her M4. The carbine felt good, familiar, an extension of her body after thousands of hours of training. "What if they don't bite?" "Then we wasted 20 minutes and we keep running." Elijah settled into his position with the economy of motion that came from decades of hunting. "But my gut says they will. These boys are confident. Confident people make assumptions, and assumptions get you killed." They waited. 5 minutes became 10. Claire controlled her breathing. 4 count in, 4 count hold, 4 count out, feeling the forest settle around her. Birds resumed their calls overhead. A squirrel chattered somewhere to her left, annoyed at the intrusion. The forest was accepting them, which meant they were invisible. This was familiar ground, the waiting, the focus, the way time stretched elastic before action collapsed it into milliseconds. She'd done this in the Hindu Kush, in training ranges from Georgia to Washington, in places she couldn't talk about with clearances she'd never acknowledge. But never with a 78-year-old Korean war vet who moved like smoke and thought 3 moves ahead of everyone else on the board. Then she heard it, boots on stone, moving quick. Too quick for proper noise discipline. Gray Jacket came through first, the point man she'd glassed earlier, scanning ahead with his HK-416, checking corners, doing everything right except slowing down. He had that contractor swagger, the kind that came from 10 years of operating in places where being aggressive kept you alive. He stepped over the log, paused, looked down at the trail, and Claire saw his eyes narrow behind his tactical sunglasses. He'd spotted something. Maybe the scuff mark was too obvious. Maybe the broken branch looked wrong. Maybe he was just good at his job. He started to bring his rifle up, mouth opening to call a warning. "Now," Elijah said, calm as Sunday morning. Claire fired twice, double-tapped center mass, exactly 4 inches apart, the way her father had taught her before the Army refined it into muscle memory. The suppressed M4 made 2 soft coughs, and the contractor dropped like someone had cut his strings. Surprise more than pain on his face. That split second where the brain knows something's wrong, but the body hasn't caught up yet. Elijah was already up and moving, rifle sweeping the back trail in smooth arcs. "Clear," he said after 3 seconds that felt like 3 hours. "His friends are far enough back they didn't hear. Move now, move fast." Claire low-crawled to the body, training overriding the part of her brain that wanted to process what she'd just done. Checked for vitals, none. Both shots had found heart, and stripped his pack with practiced efficiency. Radio, encrypted Motorola. 3 spare mags for the HK, military ball ammunition. Energy bars and a water bottle. And a laminated map with their valley marked in red, with grid coordinates and penciled notes in tight, professional handwriting. "Look at this," she said, holding it up. Elijah took it, studied it for maybe 2 seconds, and his face went from weathered stone to carved ice. "Jesus Christ. What?" "These coordinates." He tapped the map with one finger, right over a cluster of pencil marks. "This isn't a smuggling route. This is a patrol grid, search pattern, systematic coverage, the kind of thing you do when you're looking for something specific. Or someone." "Yeah." He looked at her, and for the first time since she'd met him, Elijah Crowe looked genuinely scared. "They're not hunting you because you crashed in the wrong place. They're hunting you because you were sent here. And someone made damn sure you'd crash before you could report what you were supposed to find." Claire felt ice water dump into her veins. "The coordinates I was sent to verify are right here." Elijah's finger moved on the map. 2 clicks northeast. And according to these notes, it's marked as Site Alpha, with a warning notation, "Extreme prejudice authorized." That's a kill order. That's a kill anyone who gets close order. He folded the map, stuffed it in his coat. "Come on, we need to put distance between us and this body. They'll find him eventually, and when they do, they'll know we're armed and dangerous." Dies the whole equation. They covered 2 miles in 40 minutes, moving fast through terrain that would have taken Claire 3 hours if she'd been alone. Elijah seemed to know every deer trail, every hidden draw, every place where the forest opened up enough to make time without exposing yourself to aerial surveillance. He stopped at a creek, actual running water this time, not the dry beds they'd crossed earlier, and pointed upstream. "We go against the current for half a click, breaks the scent trail, confuses tracking dogs if they bring any in, and we need water anyway." Claire knelt, filled her bottles, drank until her stomach sloshed. The water was glacier cold, probably snowmelt from higher elevations, and it tasted like rocks and distance. Elijah drank too, refilled, then pulled out the laminated map and spread it on a flat stone. "Site Alpha is here." He tapped the coordinates. 2 clicks northeast, like I said. According to the map, there's a structure marked as facility with a notation about security protocols. A facility in the middle of federal forest. A facility that someone doesn't want found. Elijah traced the patrol routes marked on the map. "Look at these patterns. They're not protecting a smuggling route, they're protecting a perimeter, keeping people out of a specific area. Claire studied the map. The patrol routes formed a rough circle about 5 kilometers in diameter, with Site Alpha at the center. Multiple observation posts marked on high ground, overlapping fields of fire, what looked like sensor arrays marked with technical shorthand. This wasn't casual security, this was military-grade denial of access. What the hell is worth this much protection? Don't know, but Marcus Webb thought it was worth dying for. Elijah folded the map. And your people sent you to verify these exact coordinates, which means someone in your chain of command knows it's here. Or suspects. Or is trying to confirm suspicions without going through official channels. He met her eyes. You ever stop to think about why they sent you alone? No backup, no support element, just a solo recon tasker? Claire had thought about it, had wondered why a mission this vague warranted a Ranger-qualified operator instead of a regular Army scout. Deniability. Bingo. If you find something, great. If you disappear, you were just a lone soldier on a routine patrol who got lost in the wilderness. No political fallout, no questions, no investigation. His voice was hard. They sent you as a canary in a coal mine, and someone made sure the mine would collapse. The implications sat between them like a third person. Someone in her command structure had set her up. Not incompetence, deliberate targeting, the wrong authentication code on the radio, the coordinates that put her directly in the patrol grid, the timing that ensured the Black Hawk would be vulnerable. We need to get to that facility, Claire said. Whatever's there, it's worth killing for, which means it's worth knowing about. Elijah studied her for a long moment. You sure? We could head north, hit my cache, gear up properly, then move towards civilization, and you can report through proper channels. And they'll bury it, same way they buried Webb's investigation. She stood, shouldering her pack. I didn't come this far to run away. My father didn't raise a quitter. A ghost of a smile crossed Elijah's face. He raised a damn fool who runs toward gunfire instead of away from it? Every day until I was 18. Then the Army took over. Well then, he picked up his rifle. Let's go see what's worth dying for. The terrain got worse as they moved northeast. Steeper, more exposed, less cover. The lodgepole pines gave way to scrub oak and granite outcrops that offered good vantage points, but precious little concealment. Elijah slowed their pace, moving from cover to cover, never skyling himself on a ridgeline, always keeping terrain between them and the most likely direction of threat. He taught as they moved, small lessons that filled the spaces between heartbeats. Wind is always your enemy or your friend, never neutral, he said, wetting his finger and holding it up. Right now it's coming from the northeast, which means anyone downwind can smell us. Sweat, gun oil, fear. So we move upwind when we can, or we move perpendicular and hope the terrain breaks up our scent cone. Claire filed that away with 100 other survival tricks she'd never learned in any school. See those birds? Elijah pointed at a cluster of crows circling maybe 400 meters to their east. Something's dead over there, or dying. Could be natural, deer that broke a leg, mountain lion kill. Could be unnatural. Either way, we avoid it. Carrion draws attention, and attention gets you killed. They skirted the area, adding 20 minutes to their route. At night, we move on the reverse slope of hills, he continued. Stay below the ridgeline, where we won't be silhouetted against the stars. And we move slow, one step every 5 seconds. Test the ground before we commit our weight. Fast movement at night is how you walk off a cliff or step on a sleeping rattlesnake. You're teaching me like I'm staying out here. You are staying out here. For the next day, maybe 2, until we figure out what's at Site Alpha and how to get the word out without getting killed in the process. He stopped, turned to face her. And if something happens to me, you need to be able to survive on your own. Can't be relying on GPS and satellite phones and all the things that stop working the second someone decides you're too much trouble to keep alive. Claire wanted to argue, but he was right. Every piece of technology she'd relied on had either been destroyed in the crash or rendered useless by people who controlled the infrastructure. Her training had made her confident in her abilities, but Elijah was showing her just how much she didn't know about actual survival. "How long did it take you to learn all this?" she asked. "A lifetime, and I'm still learning." He started walking again. "My father used to say that the forest teaches two kinds of lessons, the ones that make you smarter and the ones that make you dead. The trick is figuring out which is which before the lesson's over." They crested a rise, and Elijah immediately dropped flat, hands shooting out to grab Claire's sleeve and pull her down beside him. She followed his gaze, scanning the valley below through a gap in the rocks. There, 400 meters out, moving in a loose patrol formation. 4 men, fully kitted, moving with purpose toward the area where they'd set up the ambush. They'd found the body, and now they were hunting in earnest. "How long before they reach our trail?" Claire whispered. 20 minutes if they're good. 10 if they've got a tracker who's better than me." Elijah glassed them with his binoculars, studying their movement. "But look at their spacing. They're not worried about an ambush anymore. They're angry. Angry people make mistakes. Sometimes. Or they get more dangerous because they stop holding back." He lowered the glass. "We need to reach Site Alpha before they reach us. Once we're inside the perimeter, the patrol patterns change. They can't just sweep through there without authorization. Gives us a window." "How do you know that?" "Because that's how I'd set it up if I was protecting something valuable. Inner perimeter with hard boundaries, outer perimeter that's flexible. You don't want your own people accidentally stumbling into something that's classified." He pointed at the map. "See these notes? Blue sectors and red sectors. Blue is where they can patrol. Red is where they can't go without clearance. And Site Alpha is in a red sector. Dead center of it." Elijah stood, staying low. "Come on, we've got maybe 2 hours of good light left, and we need to use it." They made it another mile before Elijah's luck ran out. The shot came from their 6 o'clock, a crack that split the afternoon quiet like God breaking kindling. Claire heard the bullet impact rock 10 feet to her left, heard Elijah grunt, saw him stumble and go down behind a boulder. "Contact rear," she shouted, training taking over. She was moving before conscious thought, rifle up, scanning for targets through the trees behind them. Nothing. Whoever had taken the shot had good fieldcraft. "Elijah, I'm hit." His voice was tight, controlled, the tone of a man assessing damage and not liking what he found. "Left leg, through and through. Missed the bone but got something important because I can't put weight on it." Claire low crawled to him, staying below the sight line of wherever that shot had come from. Elijah had his back against the boulder, left pant leg dark with blood, rifle across his lap. His face was pale but his hands were steady, which meant he wasn't in shock yet. Another shot cracked, hitting the boulder 6 inches above Elijah's head. Rock fragments sprayed, and Claire caught a glimpse of muzzle flash. 300 meters out, elevated position, probably prone on a ridgeline. Sniper, or at least someone with a precision rifle and the skill to use it. "Can you move?" she asked. "Not fast enough." Elijah pulled a compressed bandage from his coat pocket, started wrapping his leg with practiced efficiency. "But I can still shoot, and I can buy you time." "We're not doing that." Not asking permission, he cinched the bandage tight, hissing through his teeth. "Listen to me. Site Alpha is a click that way." He pointed northeast. "You can make it in 20 minutes if you move fast. I'll keep their attention here, make them think we're both holed up. By the time they figure it out, you'll be inside the perimeter. And you'll be dead. Maybe, maybe not." He checked his rifle, worked a bolt. "But you'll have answers, and you can get those answers out, which is more important than whether an old man dies in the woods, where he always figured he would anyway." Claire felt something hot and sharp lodge in her chest. "I don't leave people behind." "Your father teach you that?" "Among other things. He teach you about acceptable losses, About mission accomplishment versus individual survival? Elijah's voice was rough, but not unkind. Because sometimes doing the right thing means someone doesn't make it home. I learned that in Korea. You probably learned it wherever you've been that you can't talk about. Another shot, this one close enough that Claire felt the pressure wave. The shooter was adjusting, getting their range. Professional work, methodical, the kind that ended with a bullet that didn't miss. There's a third option, Claire said. I suppress, you move. We both get to sight alpha. We both get answers. On one leg? On three limbs, in pure spite if necessary. She checked her ammunition. 12 rounds in the current mag, 2 full mags left. 37 rounds total against at least 4 shooters, possibly more. Not great odds, but she'd worked with worse. When I start shooting, you move. Don't argue, don't hesitate, just move. Clear? Elijah looked at her for a long moment, then nodded, once, sharp. Clear. On 3. Claire shifted position, getting her rifle settled, finding the spot where she'd seen muzzle flash. 1, 2, 3. She came up firing, controlled pairs, walking her shots across the ridgeline where the sniper was hiding. 12 rounds in 6 seconds, every trigger pull smooth and deliberate, forcing the shooter to get his head down or get it removed. Elijah moved. Not graceful, not fast, but moving. He hauled himself upright using the boulder for support, got his rifle slung, and started hobbling northeast using a dead branch as a makeshift crutch. Claire emptied her magazine, dropped it, slapped in a fresh one, and kept shooting. Suppressive fire wasn't about hitting targets. It was about making the other guy too scared to shoot back. "Moving!" she shouted. She broke cover, sprinting after Elijah, zigzagging through the scrub oak while bullets chewed up the ground behind her. 30 meters. 50. She caught up to him behind a fallen Douglas fir, both of them breathing hard, both still alive. "You're insane," Elijah gasped. "Runs in the family." Claire scanned their back trail. No movement yet, but it would come. The sniper would call in their position, the patrol would adjust, and the net would tighten. "Can you walk?" "Can I run?" "No." "Can I walk well enough to avoid dying in the next hour?" "Maybe." He grimaced. "But I'm slowing you down." Then we both slow down and get there together. Claire pulled out the map, oriented herself. Sight alpha is that way, through that draw. Half a click. We can make it. You can make it. We both make it, or neither of us does. That's the deal. She met his eyes, saw the argument forming, cut it off. "My father didn't leave his people behind. Marcus Webb didn't leave you behind. I'm not starting a new tradition." Elijah stared at her. Then something in his face shifted, and he nodded. "All right then, let's see what secrets are worth all this dying." They made it 300 meters before the forest changed. Not obviously, the trees were still trees, the rocks still rocks. But something was different. The birds had stopped singing. The insects had gone quiet. Even the wind seemed to die down, like the forest itself was holding its breath. "You feel that?" Elijah whispered. Claire felt it. The hair on the back of her neck standing up, the primitive hindbrain warning that predators were close. "We're being watched." "Not by people," Elijah pointed up, and Claire followed his gaze to a small black dome mounted on a tree 30 feet above them. Camera, probably thermal, definitely networked. "We just crossed the inner perimeter. They know we're here. They've known for the last 90 seconds. He shifted his weight, favoring his good leg. Which means either they're letting us in, or they're setting up a reception committee. Claire checked her rifle, counted her ammunition again. 1 magazine loaded, 1 spare. 28 rounds total. If they're setting up, we walk into an ambush. If they're letting us in, it's because they want us to see something. Either way, we're committed. Your call. You're the one who's going to have to live with it. She thought about that, thought about her father's voice, about the mission brief that had sent her here, about Marcus Webb dying alone in these woods 5 years ago. thought about all the ways this could go wrong, and the one way it might go right. We go forward. She started moving, rifle at low ready. Whatever they're hiding, I want to see it. They moved through the trees, following a trail that was too well maintained to be natural. Gravel path, drainage culverts, cleared sightlines. Whoever ran Site Alpha had money and infrastructure. After 200 meters, the trees opened up into a clearing, and Claire stopped so suddenly that Elijah almost ran into her. Jesus, she breathed. The facility was built into the hillside, or under it, more accurately. From certain angles, you wouldn't see it at all, just granite and scrub oak. But from where they stood, Claire could see the entrance. A blast door big enough to drive a truck through, set into reinforced concrete that had been textured and painted to blend with the natural rock. No windows, no markings, just a keypad and a camera, and the sense that whatever was behind that door, it wasn't supposed to exist. That's military construction, Elijah said quietly. I saw bunkers like that in Korea, command posts, ammunition depots, places where you kept things you didn't want the enemy finding. Or your own people, sometimes. A speaker crackled to life above the door. Sergeant Holloway, you are trespassing on federal property. Drop your weapons and place your hands on your head. Claire's blood froze. They knew her name. They'd been expecting her. This wasn't a random facility she'd stumbled across. This was exactly where she'd been sent, and someone had known she'd survive the crash and make it here. Who are you? She called out. Drop your weapons. Last warning. She looked at Elijah. He looked back, and she saw the same calculation in his eyes that she was running in her own head. Drop the weapons. They were at the mercy of people who'd already tried to kill her once. Keep the weapons. They'd be shot on sight by whatever security was aiming at them right now. Your father ever teach you about no-win scenarios? Elijah asked. He taught me that there's always a third option if you're creative enough. Claire raised her voice, addressing the camera. I'm wounded. My companion is wounded. We need medical attention, and we need to report on the hostile force operating in this valley. You want us unarmed, fine, but you're going to answer some questions first. Silence. Then, you're not in a position to negotiate. Neither are you. Because if we don't check in with our people in the next 12 hours, this whole area gets swarmed with federal investigators. And I'm guessing whatever you're doing here doesn't play well with oversight. She was bluffing, but the bluff sounded good. So here's the deal. You give us medical attention and answers. We consider not burning this place to the ground. Sound fair? More silence. Then the blast door began to grind open, hydraulics hissing, revealing a lit corridor beyond. And standing in that corridor, wearing civilian clothes but carrying an M4 with the casual competence of someone who'd carried it professionally, was a woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and eyes like chips of ice. Fair enough, Sergeant Holloway, the woman said. Welcome to Project Sanctuary. Please do come in. We've been expecting you. The corridor was antiseptic white, with LED lighting and that peculiar smell of recirculated air that meant they were underground. Deep underground, if Claire was reading the thickness of the blast door correctly. The woman led them past security checkpoints, biometric scanners, and camera clusters that tracked their movement with mechanical precision. I'm Dr. Sarah Kessler, the woman said without turning around, Director of Operations for this facility. And before you ask, yes, we knew you were coming. No, the crash wasn't our doing. And yes, we're going to explain everything. But first, let's get your friends some medical attention. How did you know my name? Claire asked. The same way we knew you were Ranger qualified, 3rd Battalion, designated marksman with a specialty in urban reconnaissance. The same way we knew your father was Staff Sergeant William Holloway, killed in action in Kandahar in 2011. Kessler's voice was matter-of-fact, delivering information like she was reading from a file, which she probably was. We've been monitoring for incursions into our operating area for 5 years. When your tasking order was cut, we were copied on the briefing. Operating security, you understand. Then why try to kill me? We didn't. Kessler stopped at a heavy door marked medical, keyed in a code. Someone else did. Someone who doesn't want this facility exposed. And before you ask who, the answer is complicated, and we're still figuring it out ourselves. The medical bay was better equipped than some field hospitals Claire had seen. Trauma beds, surgical equipment, pharmacy that would make a CVS jealous. A medic who looked like he'd done his time in the army took one look at Elijah's leg and got to work without being asked. Bullet missed the femoral artery by maybe half an inch, the medic said. You're lucky. Another few millimeters and you'd have bled out in 5 minutes. As it is, you're looking at 6 weeks recovery time and a permanent limp. Added to the collection, Elijah said, then to Kessler. So what is this place? Kessler pulled up a chair, sat down like she was about to deliver a briefing. Project Sanctuary. Officially, we don't exist. Unofficially, we're a continuity of government facility built during the Cold War, updated in the 90s, reactivated in 2018. We maintain strategic reserves, communications infrastructure, and safe haven for key personnel in case of catastrophic national emergency. You're a doomsday bunker, Claire said. We're an insurance policy, and like all insurance policies, we hope to never use it. Kessler leaned forward. But we also house classified research, prototype technology, and intelligence archives that would be catastrophic if they fell into the wrong hands. Which is why we have the security perimeter you so effectively penetrated. The contractors aren't ours. That's the problem. Kessler's expression went hard. 3 months ago, we started detecting unauthorized intrusions. Professional operators, well-funded, trying to map our security protocols. We reported it up the chain. The response was insufficient. So we started keeping records, collecting evidence. And what we found suggested that someone very high up in the command structure is trying to compromise this facility. Claire felt the pieces clicking into place. My mission wasn't about verifying thermal signatures. Your mission was a test. Someone wanted to see if they could insert an operator into our perimeter without triggering our defenses. You were the canary, like your friend suggested. Kessler nodded at Elijah. And when you survived the crash, which for the record we did not cause, the contractors activated to eliminate you before you could report what you found. But you wanted me to find you. We wanted someone to find us, someone we could trust to get the truth out. Kessler stood, walked to a wall-mounted screen, brought up a display. Satellite imagery, patrol routes, communication intercepts. We've been compromised from the inside. Someone is feeding our security protocols to an outside group. And when we tried to investigate, 3 of our personnel died in what were officially reported as training accidents. Marcus Webb, Elijah said quietly. Kessler turned. You knew Agent Webb? I was guiding him when he got killed. 5 years ago, right before he disappeared, he told me he was investigating weapons shipments, said the routes all came through this valley. Webb wasn't investigating shipments. He was investigating us. Kessler pulled up another file. DEA was a cover. He was FBI counterintelligence, trying to figure out if this facility had been compromised. He got too close, and they killed him. Made it look like he'd stumbled into a drug operation gone wrong. Claire's chest felt tight. How many people know about this? Internally? Maybe 12 of us. Externally? That's what we're trying to determine. Which is why when your tasking order came through our system, we flagged it. We needed someone who could survive long enough to reach us and hear the truth. Someone who couldn't be easily dismissed or silenced. You used me as bait. We gave you a chance to uncover something that could prevent a catastrophic breach of national security. Kessler's voice was steel. I'm sorry about your crew. I'm sorry about the crash. But if we don't stop whoever's trying to expose this facility, a lot more people are going to die, and we need your help to do it. They gave Claire and Elijah a room, more of a cell really, but comfortable enough. 2 bunks, a bathroom, MREs, and water. And most importantly, a secure terminal where Kessler said Claire could file her report. Once you send that, Kessler had said, the clock starts ticking. Whoever's trying to compromise us will know we've made contact with someone outside their control. They'll either try to silence you permanently or burn the evidence and disappear. So we move fast. We move smart. Fast gets you killed. Kessler had left them then, promising to return with full briefing materials. Now Claire sat at the terminal, staring at the blank screen, trying to figure out what to write. Behind her, Elijah was cleaning his rifle. The medic had returned his weapons once his leg was patched up, with the methodical care of someone who'd been doing it for 60 years. "You trust her?" he asked. "I don't know." Claire rubbed her eyes. She was exhausted. Her shoulder was a constant throb, and her brain felt like it was wrapped in cotton. Everything she said makes sense, but so does the possibility that this is an elaborate deception to find out what I know and who I've told. "Your father ever teach you how to tell when someone's lying?" "He taught me that everyone lies eventually. The question is whether they're lying about something that matters." "Smart man." Elijah set down his rifle, looked at her directly. "So here's what matters. Are we safer in here or out there?" Claire thought about that. Out there, contractors hunting them, no supplies, limited ammunition, and Elijah's leg getting worse by the hour. In here, potential enemies who knew everything about her, but also potential allies with resources and information. Neither option was good, but one option at least offered the possibility of answers. "We're safer in here," she said, "for now. Then we stay, we listen, and we look for the exits." Elijah pulled out the laminated map they'd taken from the dead contractor. "And we figure out what the hell is really going on before someone figures out how to kill us inside this bunker." A knock on the door. Kessler entered without waiting for permission, carrying a tablet and looking like she'd aged 5 years in the last hour. "We have a problem," she said. "Of course we do," Claire muttered. "The contractors just breached the outer perimeter. 6 of them, heavily armed, moving toward the facility entrance with demo charges." Kessler pulled up a display on the tablet, security camera feeds showing men in tactical gear moving through the forest with professional precision. "They're not trying to be subtle anymore. They're going to blow the door and come in shooting. Your security can handle 6 men. Our security is designed to keep people out, not defend against a sustained assault. We've got maybe 4 armed personnel on site, and they're researchers who carry weapons because regulations say they have to, not because they're operators." Kessler's voice was tight. "If those contractors get inside, they'll kill everyone here and destroy the evidence. We need to stop them before they reach the door." Claire looked at Elijah. He looked back, and she saw the same cold calculation in his eyes. "You want us to stop them," she said. "I want you to buy us time. Enough time to upload our evidence to 3 separate secure servers and get it distributed to people who can't be compromised. 20 minutes. That's all we need. And if we can't hold them for 20 minutes, then we're all dead, and whatever's been happening here continues." Kessler set the tablet down. "But your ranger qualified. He's been surviving in these woods longer than those contractors have been alive. If anyone can hold that perimeter, it's you two." Claire stood, checked her rifle, counted her ammunition for what felt like the 1,000th time. Still not enough. Never enough. "What assets do we have?" "The security station has an armory. M4s, ammunition, night vision, body armor. And the perimeter has sensors and cameras you can access from the control terminal." Kessler pulled up a schematic. "The contractors are coming from the southeast, moving through this draw. If you can set up a defense in depth here, here, and here, you might be able to channel them into a kill zone." Elijah stood, testing his leg. The medic had done good work. He could walk without the crutch, though every step obviously hurt. Channel them or stop them? Your choice. But remember, they're here to destroy evidence. If they get inside, everything we've worked for is gone. Claire looked at the schematic, at the tactical situation, at the odds they were facing. 6 contractors against 2 wounded operators with limited ammunition and no backup. The kind of odds that got you a medal posthumously or a closed casket funeral. "We need to call for help," she said. "We will, once the evidence is uploaded and distributed." Kessler met her eyes. "But right now, for the next 20 minutes, you're the only help we have. So I need to know, can you hold that perimeter?" Claire thought about her father, thought about what he would do, facing impossible odds, trying to protect something important. Thought about his voice in her head, calm and certain. "Sometimes the only way out is through." "Yeah," she said, "we can hold it." The armory was better stocked than Claire had expected. Racks of M4s, cases of ammunition, body armor that actually fit, and night vision that was only 1 generation out of date. She and Elijah kitted up in silence, the mechanical ritual of preparing for combat taking over from conscious thought. "Radio check," she said, testing the comms they'd been issued. "Lima Charlie," Elijah replied, loud and clear. His voice was steady, no fear, no hesitation. Just a man who'd done this before and knew how it ended, one way or another. They moved to the perimeter in darkness, using night vision to navigate the forest that Elijah knew by instinct and Claire was learning by necessity. The contractors were still 400 meters out, moving in a staggered column, taking their time. They thought they had all night. They thought the facility was soft. They were about to learn otherwise. "I'll take the high position," Claire said, indicating a granite outcrop that overlooked the draw. "Sniper overwatch. You take the low position, here where the trail narrows. Ambush trigger." "Same playbook as before," Elijah said, "except now they know we're dangerous. Then we be more dangerous." She checked her rifle one more time. 3 magazines, 30 rounds each. 90 rounds total. Against 6 men who'd been hunting them for 2 days and were probably very, very angry. Sometimes the only way out is through. She moved into position, settling behind a fallen log on the outcrop, getting her rifle stable, controlling her breathing. The night vision turned the world into green shadows and thermal ghosts. She could see the contractors now, moving closer, weapons up, scanning for threats. "I've got eyes on," she whispered. 6 tangos, spread over 50 meters. Lead element is 200 meters out. "Copy," Elijah said. "Waiting on your call." Claire centered her reticle on the lead contractor's chest, felt her heartbeat slow, her breathing settle, that moment of perfect stillness before violence erupted. The contractor stepped into the kill zone. "Send it," Elijah said quietly. Claire fired. The firefight lasted 4 minutes and felt like 4 hours. Claire's first shot dropped the lead contractor. Center mass, clean kill, exactly as trained. The second shot missed because the second contractor was already diving for cover, fast enough that she only clipped his shoulder. Then the forest erupted with return fire, muzzle flashes strobing the darkness, bullets snapping through the air around her position. "Contact front!" she shouted, more from training than necessity. Elijah knew where the enemy was. He was already shooting, his hunting rifle booming like artillery, each shot deliberate and precise. Another contractor down, then a third, caught trying to flank around the low side. But the remaining 3 were professionals, and they adapted fast. Suppressive fire raked Claire's position, forcing her head down, chewing up the log she was hiding behind. She felt something tug at her sleeve, felt the burn of a near miss, felt the primal scream in her hindbrain that said, "Run, run now, before they kill you." She didn't run. She reloaded, came up shooting, switched targets, kept moving. "They're trying to bound past us," Elijah called. "2 moving up the right flank." Claire pivoted, caught one of the flankers in her sight picture, fired twice. The contractor stumbled but didn't fall. Body armor, center mass shots weren't enough. She adjusted, fired again, this time aiming for the head. The contractor dropped. 5 down, 1 remaining. And that one had learned from watching his teammates die. He wasn't exposing himself. He wasn't trying to flank. He was pulling back, repositioning, probably calling for backup or preparing to use those demo charges on her position instead of the door. "I'm moving," Claire shouted. She bounded backward, using fire and movement the way she'd been trained, putting distance between herself and where the contractor thought she was. 30 meters, 50, into a new position behind a boulder, reloading, scanning for the last threat. Nothing. The forest had gone quiet again. That terrible stillness after violence that meant the survivors were reassessing, recalculating, deciding whether to press or withdraw. "Status?" Elijah asked. 5 confirmed down, 1 unaccounted for. "You?" "Legs bleeding again, but I'm functional. Low on ammunition, 4 rounds left." Claire checked her own status. 1 magazine remaining, 30 rounds. Shoulder was on fire, head was pounding, and she was pretty sure she had at least 1 cracked rib from when she'd hit the ground diving for cover. But she was alive, which was more than the 5 contractors could say. "The last one's pulling back," she said. "He's going to report, regroup, come back with more. Or he's going to complete the mission himself. Demo charges on the door, blow the evidence, extract before we can stop him. Can we catch him?" "Not on this leg, but you can." Elijah's voice was hard. "Go, I'll hold the perimeter. You stop him from reaching that door." Claire didn't argue, didn't waste time, just moved, pushing through the pain and exhaustion, following the sound of someone crashing through the forest ahead of her. The last contractor running now, abandoning stealth for speed, trying to reach the facility before she could stop him. She caught up to him 200 meters from the blast door. He heard her coming, spun, rifle coming up. Claire tackled him. They went down hard, all kinetic energy and grappling, rifle butts used as clubs, knees and elbows, and the kind of close-quarters fighting that wasn't elegant or technical, just desperate. He was bigger, stronger, better rested, but she was meaner, and she'd learned a long time ago that in a real fight, mean beats strong every time. She got her knee on his chest, her sidearm out, pressed against his forehead. "Don't," she gasped. He looked at her and she saw the calculation in his eyes, saw him deciding whether he could twist away, whether he could. She pulled the trigger. The Glock bucked once, and the contractor stopped calculating permanently. 6 down, mission complete. 20 minutes had passed, maybe more. She'd lost track of time somewhere between the ambush and the kill. Claire sat back, breathing hard, tasting blood, realizing she'd bitten through her lip at some point. Around her the forest was silent again, accepting the violence as just another part of its eternal cycle. Her radio crackled. "Holloway, this is Kessler. Status?" "All threats neutralized," Claire said. Her voice sounded wrong, distant, like someone else was using her mouth. "Perimeter is secure. Evidence is uploaded and distributed. You did it. You bought us enough time." "Great." Claire stood, started walking back toward where she'd left Elijah. "Send the medic. Elijah needs attention, and I think I might need some stitches." "Already on the way. And Holloway?" "Yeah?" "Thank you. What you just did, what you both did, it matters, more than you know." Claire didn't respond, couldn't find the words. She just walked through the forest, stepping over bodies, trying to remember when killing 6 people had started to feel routine, and wondering what her father would think of what she'd become. Probably proud, she decided. Staff Sergeant Holloway hadn't raised a quitter. He'd raised a survivor who did what needed doing, regardless of cost. The forest didn't judge, it just waited, patient as always, for the next lesson it would teach. The medic found them sitting against a tree 200 meters from the blast door, both bleeding, both alive, both too exhausted to move another step. Jesus Christ, the medic breathed, taking in the scene. 6 bodies scattered through the forest, blood on the pine needles, the smell of cordite hanging in the air like a ghost. You two did all this? They did most of the dying, Elijah said. His voice was steady, but his face was gray, shock starting to set in despite the field dressing on his leg. We just helped them along. The medic, his name tag said Patterson, got to work with professional efficiency. IV for Elijah, fresh bandages, a shot of something that made the old man's eyes go glassy and distant. Then he turned to Claire, examining the damage with practiced hands. Cracked rib, maybe 2. Concussion. That shoulder's dislocated, not broken, but you've been walking on it for 2 days, so the soft tissue damage is extensive. You're going to need surgery and 6 months of physical therapy. Patterson shook his head. How the hell are you still conscious? Spite, Claire said, and good genetics. Your father teach you that too? He taught me that pain is just your body's way of saying you're still alive. Long as I can feel it, I'm winning. She winced as Patterson manipulated her shoulder, checking range of motion. How's the upload going? Kessler says it's complete. Evidence is now on 3 different secure servers, distributed to 7 different agencies, and flagged with deadman switches. If anything happens to the people who sent it, automatic release to the media. Patterson pulled out a syringe. This is going to hurt. What is it? Lidocaine, morphine, and something to keep you from going into shock. You ready? Claire nodded. Patterson injected, and the world went soft around the edges, pain receding to a distant throb that she could acknowledge without caring about. That's good stuff. Military grade, we keep it for emergencies. He helped her stand, supporting her weight. Come on, Dr. Kessler wants to debrief you both, and then we're getting you to a real hospital. No hospitals, Elijah said. His words were slurred but firm. Too many questions, too many records. I go home to my cabin, heal there. You need proper medical care. I need to not end up on some database where the people who sent those contractors can find me. Elijah met Patterson's eyes. I've been living off-grid for 70 years, not about to change that now. Patterson looked at Claire. She shrugged, or tried to, the pain medication making the gesture loose and imprecise. He's got a point. If someone's trying to bury this, anyone associated with the facility becomes a target. That's why we're evacuating, Patterson said. Kessler's orders, everyone out within the hour, facility gets locked down, and we scatter until the investigation is complete. You two will be given new identities, protection, the works. I don't want protection. I want answers. Claire started walking toward the blast door, forcing her legs to cooperate. Who sent those contractors? Who compromised the mission? Who killed my crew? That's what Kessler wants to talk to you about. Patterson keyed his radio. Control, this is medical. I've got both subjects, ambulatory, bringing them in now. The blast door ground open as they approached, and the sterile white corridor beyond looked like heaven compared to the blood-soaked forest behind them. Claire stepped inside, and the door sealed behind her with a finality that felt like a coffin lid closing. The briefing room was deeper inside the facility, past security checkpoints and blast-proof doors, in a space that looked like it had been designed to survive a nuclear war. Which, Claire reflected, it probably had been. Dr. Kessler was waiting, along with 3 other people Claire hadn't seen before. 2 men in their 50s wearing the kind of neutral business attire that screamed federal agent, and a woman in her 30s with the intense focus of someone who'd spent too many years staring at classified documents. Sergeant Holloway, Mr. Crowe, Kessler gestured to chairs. Thank you for buying us the time we needed. The evidence is now secure and distributed. Whatever happens next, the truth is going to come out. What truth? Claire sat, grateful to be off her feet. Elijah lowered himself into the adjacent chair with a grunt, favoring his wounded leg. The truth about what this facility really is, and who's been trying to compromise it. Kessler pulled up a display on the wall screen. Photos, documents, communication intercepts. Project Sanctuary isn't just a continuity of government bunker. It's also a repository for classified programs that were deemed too sensitive or too controversial to exist in official records. Black sites, one of the federal agents said. His name tag identified him as Reynolds, FBI. Operations that were conducted without congressional oversight, sometimes without presidential authorization. Things that would cause international incidents if they were ever exposed. Like what? Elijah asked. Rendition programs, enhanced interrogation techniques, covert actions in countries we were officially at peace with. The woman, Chen, NSA, pulled up a list of program names, most of them redacted. This facility houses the documentation for 40 years of operations that the government would prefer stayed buried. Claire felt something cold settle in her chest. And someone wants to expose them. Or weaponize them, Reynolds said. Imagine having documentation of illegal government operations. The blackmail potential alone is worth billions. The geopolitical leverage is incalculable. Who, Claire asked, who's trying to get this information? Kessler pulled up a photo. A man in his 60s, military uniform, more stars on his shoulders than Claire could easily count. General Theodore Carver, 4-star current Deputy Commander of Joint Special Operations Command. He's been in a position to know about black programs for the last 15 years. And 3 months ago, he started making inquiries about Project Sanctuary. Inquiries aren't crimes. No, but ordering the assassination of personnel who question those inquiries is. Kessler pulled up more documentation. Agent Marcus Webb was investigating weapons trafficking. What he actually found was a pattern. Equipment going missing from JSOC inventory, showing up in civilian contractor hands, being used to probe our security. When Webb reported his findings to General Carver, Webb died within a week. Elijah's hands tightened on his chair. Carver had him killed. We believe so. And when your mission was tasked, Sergeant Holloway, it was Carver who signed the orders. Carver who specified the coordinates. Carver who ensured you'd be sent alone, with minimal support, into an area he knew was under hostile surveillance. He set me up to die. He set you up to confirm the facility's location and security protocols. Your death would have been an unfortunate side effect. Kessler's voice was hard. But you survived. You reached us. And now we have evidence linking him to multiple felonies, including murder, conspiracy, and treason. Claire tried to process that. A 4-star general, someone at the highest levels of military command, orchestrating a conspiracy to compromise classified programs for personal gain. It should have been unthinkable. But she'd seen enough of the world to know that power corrupted, and absolute power corrupted in ways that would make Machiavelli proud. What happens now? She asked. Now the evidence goes to the Department of Justice, the Inspector General, and congressional oversight committees. Reynolds leaned forward. General Carver will be arrested within the next 48 hours. His co-conspirators, we've identified at least 6 others in the contractor network, will be rolled up simultaneously. The program will be exposed, investigated, and hopefully reformed. And us? Elijah asked. You become protected witnesses, new identities, relocation, federal protection until the trials are complete. It's not optional, Mr. Crowe. The people Carver was working with have long reach and fewer scruples than he does. They will try to silence you. How long? Claire asked. Trials? Could be years. Protective custody? However long it takes. Chen pulled up a document. You'll be debriefed extensively, your testimony will be recorded, and then you'll disappear into WITSEC until you're called to testify. Years. Claire thought about that. Years of hiding, years of looking over her shoulder, years of not being Claire Holloway, but someone else entirely. The idea made her skin crawl. "There's another option," Kessler said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. "The evidence is distributed. The investigation is launched. But you two, you never made it here. You died in the forest, killed by the same contractors who killed your crew. The official record shows that Sergeant Holloway was KIA during a training accident, and Mr. Crowe was a civilian casualty in the wrong place at the wrong time." "You want us to disappear," Elijah said. "I'm giving you the choice to disappear on your own terms, rather than the government's." Kessler met their eyes. "You walk away. No protection, no testimony, no trials. Just fade into the background and live whatever life you want, without federal oversight. And if we're found, you won't be, because officially, you're already dead. And the people looking for you won't waste resources hunting ghosts." Kessler pulled up 2 folders, set them on the table. Death certificates, burial records, memorial services, all official, all filed. You become anyone you want to be, go anywhere you want to go. The only price is that you can never be who you were again. Claire looked at the folder with her name on it, looked at Elijah, who was staring at his own folder with an expression she couldn't read. "What about my crew?" she asked. "The pilots who died in the crash, do they get justice?" "They get the truth," Reynolds said. "The official record will show they died in combat, killed by enemy action during a classified operation. Their families will be notified, honored, compensated. It's not perfect, but it's better than training accident. And Carver goes to prison for the rest of his life, one way or another. Your testimony would help, but we have enough evidence without it." Kessler's voice was gentle. "You've done enough, Sergeant Holloway. You've bled enough. No one would blame you for walking away." Claire thought about her father, thought about what he would do, facing this choice. Duty versus survival. Justice versus peace. The life she'd built versus the life she could have. She looked at Elijah. "What do you think?" The old man was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I think I've been dead once already. Died the day Marcus Webb got killed and I did nothing. Maybe it's time to make that official and spend whatever time I've got left living instead of surviving." Claire nodded slowly. It made sense. A twisted, complicated kind of sense, but sense nonetheless. She joined the army to serve, to make a difference, to honor her father's memory. She'd done that, and if she kept going, kept testifying, kept being Sergeant Claire Holloway of the 75th Ranger Regiment, she'd spend the rest of her life looking over her shoulder and waiting for someone to put a bullet in it. But if she died here, in these woods, killed by contractors in a firefight that never officially happened, then Claire Holloway could finally rest. And someone else, someone new, could start fresh. "I want one thing," she said. "Name it," Kessler replied. "My father's grave, Arlington National Cemetery. I want to visit one more time before I disappear. Say goodbye properly." Kessler nodded. "It can be arranged. We'll stage it as a memorial service for you, actually. Family and friends gathering to say goodbye to Sergeant Holloway. You'll be there, but no one will recognize you. New face, new identity, new life. Sound acceptable?" "Yeah," Claire's voice was rough. "Yeah, that sounds acceptable." They gave her 3 days. 3 days in the medical facility, getting surgery on her shoulder, having her ribs taped, being pumped full of antibiotics and painkillers while her body tried to remember how to heal. 3 days of sleeping in a real bed, eating real food, and slowly coming to terms with the fact that the life she'd known was over. Elijah was in the room next door, recovering from his own surgery. The doctors said he'd live, but the limp would be permanent, and his days of hiking 20 miles through the wilderness were probably over. He'd taken the news with the same stoic acceptance he'd shown when facing down 6 armed contractors. "Getting old anyway," he'd said. "About time I slowed down." On the 3rd day, they brought Claire her new identity. Sarah Mitchell, 32, former Army medic with an honorable discharge and PTSD from a deployment to Iraq. Complete backstory, complete documentation, even a credit history and social media presence that had been carefully constructed over the past 72 hours. Sarah Mitchell doesn't have a father buried in Arlington, the technician explained, but she does have an aunt who died recently, and the funeral is tomorrow. You'll attend, pay your respects to Claire Holloway, and then Sarah Mitchell will drive away and never look back. And Elijah? Thomas Wade, retired park ranger, 78 years old, recently widowed. He has a cabin in Montana, same cabin actually, but the deed is in a different name now. He'll live out his days there, collecting his government pension, and no one will ever connect him to Elijah Crowe. Claire met Thomas Wade, formerly Elijah Crowe, in the corridor outside the medical bay. He was using a cane now, but he moved with the same quiet competence she'd come to recognize. "You ready for this?" he asked. "No," she admitted. "You?" "Been ready to disappear for 5 years. Just took this long to have a good reason." He studied her face, her real face, before the cosmetic changes they do tomorrow. "Your father would be proud of you, you know. What you did here, what you're choosing to do now." "How do you know?" "Because I'm proud of you. And I'm just a stubborn old man who's got no claim to your accomplishments." He smiled, and it was the first genuine smile she'd seen from him. "You gave me a chance to make up for running away from Marcus Webb. Gave me a chance to stand and fight when it mattered. That's worth more than you know. You saved my life, multiple times. And you saved mine right back, so we're even." He extended his hand. "Sarah Mitchell, it was a pleasure meeting you. I hope your aunt's funeral goes well." Claire shook his hand, understanding what he was doing. Saying goodbye to Claire Holloway and Elijah Crowe before they became people who never existed. "Thomas Wade, the pleasure was mine, and if you ever need anything, if you're ever in trouble, you know where to find me." "I do, but I won't." He squeezed her hand once, then let go. "The whole point of disappearing is to disappear, you understand?" She understood. Understood that this was the last time she'd see the man who taught her how to read the forest, how to survive when survival wasn't supposed to be possible, how to make the hard choices that separated the living from the dead. "Take care of yourself, old man," she said. "You too, young lady. And remember, when you're walking a new path, don't look back. The trail behind you is for people who aren't moving forward." Arlington National Cemetery was exactly as Claire remembered it. Rows of white headstones stretching to the horizon, perfect and pristine, each one marking a life given in service. She'd been here for her father's burial 15 years ago, a 17-year-old girl trying not to cry while a chaplain recited words she didn't hear, and soldiers fired a 3-volley salute that made her flinch. Now she was here again, but not as Claire Holloway. As Sarah Mitchell, a stranger attending the funeral of someone she'd never met, standing at the back of a small crowd while a chaplain recited words over an empty coffin. Because there was no body. Claire Holloway had died in the wilderness, killed in combat, and her remains had been too damaged for open casket viewing. That's what the official record said. That's what the Army had told her mother, her friends, her unit. She watched her mother standing by the grave, stoic and silent, the way military families learn to be. Watched her fellow Rangers standing at attention, eyes forward, honoring a fallen comrade. Watched the flag being folded, presented, the ritual that turned death into something dignified and meaningful. And she felt nothing. Not sadness, not grief, not even relief. Just a vast emptiness where Claire Holloway used to be, and the strange, floating sensation of watching her own funeral from the outside. The ceremony ended. People filed past the grave, offering condolences to her mother, sharing memories of a woman they'd known. Claire, Sarah, stayed back, watching from a distance, until most of the crowd had dispersed. Then she walked forward, approaching the grave, looking down at the headstone that had been prepared in advance. S.G.T. Claire Holloway, U.S. Army, Ranger, 1997 to 2024. Beloved daughter, courage under fire. Simple, direct, true in its own way. She knelt, placed her hand on the cold marble, and whispered words only the dead could hear. I'm sorry I can't stay, Dad. I'm sorry I have to walk away from everything you taught me to be proud of. But I think you'd understand. You always said that surviving isn't the same as living, and I've been surviving for so long I forgot what living felt like. The stone was silent. The dead didn't answer. But Claire felt something shift inside her chest. Some weight she'd been carrying finally settling into a position where it didn't hurt quite so much. I love you, she said. I'll always love you. But I can't be your daughter anymore. I have to be someone else now, someone who gets to choose her own path. She stood, looked one more time at her mother, older, grayer, but still standing straight, and felt the grief she'd been holding back finally crack through. She wanted to go to her, to hold her, to tell her it was all a lie and she was still alive. But Sarah Mitchell didn't know Margaret Holloway. Sarah Mitchell was just a stranger paying respects. So she walked away, past the rows of headstones, past the other mourners, past the life she'd lived for 27 years. She got into her car, a used Honda Civic that Sarah Mitchell owned, complete with registration and insurance, and she drove out of the cemetery without looking back. The road ahead was empty. Unknown, terrifying and liberating in equal measure. Behind her, Claire Holloway rested in peace. Ahead of her, Sarah Mitchell had a whole life to figure out. 6 months later, Sarah Mitchell was working as a hunting guide in Montana, leading tourists through the same kind of wilderness that Claire Holloway had learned to survive in. The job paid decent, the people were generally tolerable, and most importantly, no one asked questions about her past beyond the basics. She'd settled into a rhythm. Wake at dawn, coffee on the porch of her small rental cabin, watching the sunrise paint the mountains gold. Work during the day, teaching city people how to track deer and not shoot themselves in the foot. Evenings spent reading or hiking or sitting in silence watching the forest exist without needing her to do anything about it. It was peaceful, quiet, nothing like the life she'd had before, and she hated every second of it. Not the work was fine. Not the people, they were mostly harmless. But the absence, the hole where purpose used to be. Claire Holloway had known exactly who she was and what she was supposed to do. Sarah Mitchell had no idea, and the uncertainty was eating her alive. She was thinking about that, about purpose and identity and whether they were the same thing, when she heard the knock on her door. 3 knocks, deliberate, patient. The kind of knock that said the person on the other side would wait as long as necessary. Sarah opened the door. Thomas Wade stood there, leaning on his cane, looking older and more weathered than he had 6 months ago, but still very much alive. He smiled when he saw her. "Evening, Sarah. Got a minute?" She stared at him. "You said you wouldn't come." "I said I wouldn't come unless I needed to, and I need to." He gestured to the porch. "Can we sit? This leg doesn't like standing as much as it used to." They sat. Sarah waited. Thomas, Elijah, took his time, like he was trying to figure out how to say something difficult. "I've been thinking," he finally said, "about that night in the forest, about what you said, that you don't leave people behind, about your father's lesson." "Okay. And I've been thinking about Marcus Webb and all the other people I've left behind over the years. Not just him, others before him. People I could have helped but didn't because it was easier to walk away." He turned to look at her directly. "I spent 5 years feeling guilty about that. And then you showed up and I got a chance to do better. To be better. And it felt like maybe that's what I was supposed to be doing all along." Sarah felt something stir in her chest, something like recognition. "Where are you going with this?" "There are other people out there like you were, like Marcus was. People who stumble into situations they're not prepared for, fighting battles they can't win alone, trying to do the right thing in places where the right thing gets you killed. Thomas pulled out a photograph, handed it to her. This girl, 19 years old, hiking the Pacific Crest Trail, stumbled across something she shouldn't have seen. Cartel operation, smuggling route, doesn't matter what. She reported it, and now she's running for her life because the people she reported it to are the people running the operation. Sarah looked at the photo. Young woman, college age, fear in her eyes but determination in her jaw. Someone who needed help and wasn't going to get it from official channels. Why are you showing me this? Because I'm too old to go get her. But you're not. Thomas leaned back in his chair. I've been doing research, quiet research, the kind that doesn't leave digital trails. There are situations like this all over. People who need help. People who won't get it through proper channels. People who'll die if someone doesn't intervene. And I thought, maybe that's what Sarah Mitchell could do. Maybe that's her purpose. Sarah was quiet for a long time, thinking about purpose, thinking about identity, thinking about the difference between surviving and living. This isn't what I signed up for, she finally said. You didn't sign up for anything. You walked away from the life where you signed up for things and took orders and followed the chain of command. Thomas's voice was gentle but firm. This is you choosing to help or choosing not to. No orders, no mission brief, no one telling you what the right answer is. Just you and a person who needs help, and the decision about what kind of person Sarah Mitchell is going to be. And if I say no, then I'll find someone else, or I'll try to help her myself and probably die in the attempt because I'm 78 and should know better. He smiled. But I don't think you'll say no, because I watched you fight 6 armed contractors to buy time for people you just met, because your father taught you not to leave people behind, and because Claire Holloway might be dead, but the person she was, the person she taught you to be, that person's still alive inside Sarah Mitchell. Sarah looked at the photograph again, looked at this girl who needed help, who'd done the right thing and was being punished for it, looked at the choice being offered, continue living this quiet, peaceful, meaningless life, or step back into danger for the sake of someone who couldn't save themselves. It wasn't really a choice at all. Where is she? Sarah asked. Thomas's smile widened. Oregon. Last known location was a ranger station near Crater Lake. She made contact 2 days ago, but the people who were supposed to extract her never showed up. Probably dead or compromised. Probably, which means she's alone, scared, and running out of time. He stood, testing his weight on the cane. I've got maps, supplies, intelligence on the opposition. Everything you'll need to go get her and bring her somewhere safe. And then what? We save one person and call it a victory? We save one person and then we find another. And another. We build a network, people like us, people who know how to operate outside the system, who can help when the system fails. Thomas held out his hand. Welcome to the old path, Sarah Mitchell, where the trail isn't marked and the destination isn't certain, but the walking is always worth it. Sarah took his hand, felt something click into place inside her chest, some piece of herself that had been missing since she'd walked away from Arlington. Purpose, identity, the knowledge that she was exactly where she was supposed to be, doing exactly what she was meant to do. When do we leave? She asked. Now, if you're ready. Later, if you're not. But every hour we wait is an hour that girl spends thinking no one's coming for her. Sarah was already moving, pulling her pack from the closet, checking her weapons. She'd kept them, of course, civilian versions but functional, loading ammunition. The ritual of preparation, familiar and comforting, muscle memory taking over from conscious thought. I'm ready, she said. And Sarah Mitchell, who used to be Claire Holloway but was something new now, something better, walked out into the Montana night with Thomas Wade, heading toward Oregon and a fight that wasn't hers but that she was making hers anyway. Because that's what you did when someone needed help and you had the skills to provide it. Because the old path wasn't about following orders or serving in uniform. It was about choosing every day to be the kind of person who didn't leave people behind. Because her father had taught her that courage wasn't the absence of fear, it was walking forward despite the fear because someone needed you to. The forest was waiting. The trail was unclear. The destination was uncertain. But Sarah Mitchell knew exactly where she was going. Forward. Always forward. On the old path that her father had walked, that Elijah had taught her to find, that she would walk for as long as her legs would carry her. Some trails ended. This one was just beginning. 3 weeks later, the girl from Oregon was safe in a cabin in Canada, living under a new name, starting a new life far away from the people who tried to kill her. Sarah Mitchell was back in Montana, treating a bullet graze on her arm and planning the next extraction. Thomas Wade was in his own cabin, coordinating intelligence, building the network, reaching out to other people who'd walked away from official lives and were looking for unofficial purposes. And in Arlington National Cemetery, a headstone marked the grave of Sergeant Claire Holloway, who had died with courage under fire and whose story was finished. But stories, Sarah knew, weren't always linear. Sometimes they branched. Sometimes they grew in unexpected directions. Sometimes they ended in one place and began in another. And the person who finished wasn't the same person who started. She'd been Claire Holloway, daughter, soldier, ranger. She'd been good at that. She'd been proud of that. Now she was Sarah Mitchell, guide, operator, someone who helped people the system couldn't or wouldn't save. She was good at this too, proud of this too. Different person, different path, same core truth, leave no one behind. Her father would have understood. Thomas understood. And Sarah, walking forward on the old path that wasn't on any map, toward destinations that weren't in any briefing, following a compass that pointed toward purpose instead of coordinates. Sarah understood too. The forest had taught her well. The lesson had been harsh but fair. Survive first, then live. And now she was living. Not the life she'd planned, not the life she'd trained for, but the life she'd chosen. And that made all the difference.